So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about gaslighting, something that's been happening to the defense from the moment that it became their case on Thursday afternoon in the case of Indiana versus Richard Allen for the deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Rebecca, and I host Crafting and Crime Daily. So you have something to listen to while you are crafting out there. So everything that you see behind me is coming down. I am going to be redecorating my backdrop to give it a more professional look. Diamond painting is what you see. It's not all that I do on my channel. In fact, I may just take that to another channel altogether. We'll see how that goes. But let's talk about Abby Williams and Libby German and their families. They're not going to get justice here, which is unfortunate. You know, we've got 2 murders, and the police are anything but interested in figuring out who really killed them. That's just my opinion, but anyway. So on Thursday afternoon, after the state rested their case with a whimper, as I put it, Cheyenne Miller took the stand. She had been out on the trail hiking with her friend. Now, she's an adult, not a teenager, and was an adult at the time. This was around 2:50 p.m. that she parked in the grass near the Mears entrance to the trail. And we've talked about that quite a bit. So she puts herself on the trail at 3:12 p.m. when she got a phone call. So this is how she could recollect that that's where she was. And I have to tell you, this is one of those witnesses where the state lost the interview. Conveniently lost the interview. She got a call from her boyfriend. She had not quite got to the bridge yet at 3:12. She did say she passed a man who was overweight, didn't respond when they said hello. It was an older guy, and he had a camera around his neck. Now, this kind of aligns with a witness that's going to take the stand, I believe, in Friday's testimony. Not Richard Allen, someone else. They continued on to the bridge, ran into a couple of friends. Everybody said hello. They went off their separate ways. Never saw anybody fitting the description of Abby and Libby or Richard Allen. They sat on the first platform of the bridge to smoke a cigarette. Actually, even, I don't know if it was before that or after that, but they continued on to the other side of the bridge. But while they were sitting there smoking their cigarette, they didn't hear anything. Nothing. No screaming, no yelling, no crying, no threats. They didn't hear anything. Okay. They go away. They go all the way to the other side of the bridge. Then they have to pee. So they said it was very steep over there. So they just kind of stayed on the bridge and did their thing real quick, and then came back across. And about 3:49 p.m., they were taking pictures on the bridge, and those pictures were published to the jury, not to the public. They were published to the jury. They contacted law enforcement the next day. They said the woman that answered the phone was very disrespectful. You know, this is serious business. Yeah, can you just take my information? The information was taken, and someone got back to them about 2 weeks later to take down their information or to hear their information. It was not, they were interviewed. It was not recorded. Yeah. So when they returned to their car that day, they did see a man and a woman. Now, keep in mind the time frame. They saw a man and a woman who were very frantic, probably Libby's parents, I'm going to guess. Because by then we know that they were there. He had arrived. He was there to pick them up. They didn't show up. So they're starting to get a little anxious at this point. I'm sure that's probably who they saw at that time. Not only was their interview not recorded, but the police wasn't interested in any of the photos, didn't take down any of their telephone information. Never heard from them again. Yeah. Interesting, huh? They don't sound like they're really interested in solving this crime. I don't know what's going on in this community. Are we all Odinists in this community? I'm just saying. Anyway. All right, let's go back to sorry, I'm a little disorganized today. And I do apologize for that. Oh my goodness. Thursday. They put on a man named Mr. Goatee. He's with the Hampton Police Department. He assisted in the investigation of Abby and Libby, doing interviews from about day 14 to about day 21, or 14 to 21 days. The way I wrote it, I can't tell which one I meant. They spoke to Brad Weber. This person spoke to Brad Weber regarding his whereabouts after work. His recollection is that Mr. Weber said he went straight home. Now, he's the one with the van. This is the all-important piece of information that nobody knew but the murderer, that there was a van out there. And that's why that he had to kill the kids, even though it doesn't fit the time frame. So you went straight home? Straight home. Went straight home. Now, this is 5 years later. He's recollecting that he went straight home. So he was working with the FBI on this special task force that they have. So when he interviewed Brad Weber, it was with this FBI person, and the FBI person put information into an FBI report. Now, in order to get an FBI report, I don't want to go into the whole legal way that you do it, but suffice it to say that you have to be able to not get that information any other way. If there's no other way you can get that information, then you can send out a subpoena for the FBI report or the FBI agent. So he was asked, is there anything that would refresh your recollection? Nope. So they just sit down at that point. And the reason they do is because now it's been established that there's no other way to get this officer, this FBI agent, and his report into evidence, which I'm sure says that he went to work on his ATMs. That's what he said several days after the murder, it's very important. It's a very important piece of information. So now the defense sits down. Now they've got to issue the subpoena. They've got to get this, they've got to get this FBI agent into the courtroom. I'm sorry, things are bouncing around. Yeah. The FBI agent's his last name is Pohl. So I think we will be hearing from him later on in the case, because it takes a little while for all this paperwork to get through the system to get this FBI report and this FBI agent to come on the stand. All right. Next person on the stand is Dr. Wanger. This is a woman who was the director of the behavioral health program at the Westfield prison while Richard Allen was there that day. She's like the person that's large and in charge. She's responsible for negotiating the contract with Centurion, who employs the psychologist, including the woman that was treating Richard Allen in the prison. She's familiar with Richard Allen, and she did oversee Dr. Wada, the person I just talked about. She confirms that he was in solitary confinement. Yes. She doesn't know who made the decision to put him in solitary confinement. She agrees that there are 3 special mental health units in the prison system in Indiana that he could have been transferred to for treatment. Someone is messaging me first thing in the morning. Okay. She was aware that Dr. Walla had a true crime interest, but she thought, well, this is before. And before she was working with Richard Allen, she didn't think this was troubling in the least. She talked about the psychiatrist being Dr. Martin, and that he is the one that does symptom management and medication. So I think this is a person we'll be hearing from later on in the trial. When Richard Allen came in, what they do is they assess them for their mental health status. And they give them a letter, A through E. A means you have no active mental health plan. You're not under any active mental health plan. B means your medications, you're on medications forever. Maybe it's an antidepressant, something like that. But you're not getting any therapy. So C means you're getting therapy through a group setting. D means you need individual therapy. And E means you need to be in a mental health unit. So when Richard Allen came in to this system, he was rated a D, meaning he needed individual therapy. That's when he got there. He deteriorated, but he never goes into a mental health unit. No. Mm-hmm. She says she's never heard of another pretrial detainee being in the hole. I'm calling it the hole, for lack of a better word, solitary confinement. Doesn't know why he was being placed there. She believes that maybe he was being threatened by other people on the unit, other prisoners on the unit, or maybe they felt like other people were going to threaten him. I don't know. She became concerned about the effect the cameras were having on his mental health, and she asked that they be removed to give him a sense of privacy and dignity. She recommended that they be removed and stopped, and never happened. Didn't happen. She said, going into the solitary confinement is very damaging to mental health. There's research to support that sensory deprivation can make your mental health worse. The policy that was put into place, and let me tell you about this policy. In Indiana, they didn't used to have a policy back in, before 2017. There was no policy earlier on, and they were sued. There was some lawsuits over the fact that, you're keeping these people in there way too long. So they were sued, and part of the settlement was that they institute this policy that says you can't keep these people in there longer than 30 days. 30 days. 30 days was the limit. So in 2017, when Richard Allen goes in there, now the policy is kind of fairly new. But it's there. There's a 30-day limit for people with serious mental illness. And she said there was no dispute that during some portions of his stay in solitary confinement, he was seriously mentally ill. He should have been limited to 30 days per their policy. The reason she says they instituted this policy, whenever you put into a policy, you have to put the reasoning Why are you implementing this policy? This is done to respond to the risk that solitary confinement could pose to a person's brain. She wasn't sure if the safekeeping order meant he was exempt from that policy. So there was some question in her mind that maybe he was exempt because of this safekeeping order. He's a human being. Why would he be exempt? His brain is the same as the brain of the other people, the people that have been convicted. Your brain doesn't change whether you've been convicted or not convicted. You're a human being. We need to protect your brain. But I guess that wasn't sinking in with her. So they did not enforce that policy with Richard Allen. She agreed. Long-term segregation can lead to serious harm. So I think we've said it. We've said it about 100 different ways. Solitary confinement gets mental health monitoring, not treatment, monitoring, to make sure they're not deteriorating. If they show signs of deterioration, then they set up a therapeutic setting. She agreed that his therapeutic setting, this little 3x3 cage that they would put him in, shackled so he could talk to his therapist, not ideal. Not ideal. And she agreed that the building where he was being kept is now condemned. It's being torn down. They're building a whole new one. She agreed with the defense that she was on his treatment team, but didn't actually provide any care. She acted more in the role of a consultant. In other words, the psychiatrist and the psychologist, Dr. Walla, they could come to her for, run things by her, basically. She said the reason these people would be transferred to a mental health unit is so they don't deteriorate. So he starts to April 15th. He starts, it gets escalated because his mental health is deteriorating. She felt it was genuine and they were trying to fix his symptoms. She said that he had what she called a grave disability. In other words, his mental health was affecting his activities of daily living, brushing his teeth, eating, toileting, sleeping. Clearly, it was affecting all of that. And that he was exhibiting symptoms of psychosis. And for that, he was prescribed Haldol. So the next person on the stand, Max Baker. Max Baker, poor guy. He's doing a legal internship with the defense team. Probably going to law school. I did the same thing. When I went to law school, I did an internship with a law firm where I would put together medical chronologies. With my nursing background, I would take the cases that they have and I would create timelines for them, medical timelines. Well, Mr. Baker was given the assignment of basically doing the same thing the other guy that's already testified was for the state. He got to listen to all those phone calls. And he was trying to match up the phone calls with the video that was available to them. And the way that the video was provided to the defense by the state was by month. Okay, here's everything in April. Here's everything in May. Here's everything in June. Like no timestamps, no audio. He said some of the transport videos have audio. So he spent, this was his full-time thing. He spent hours and hours and hours trying to piece it together chronologically. He created 2 videos. So here's what he did. He tried to pull out the 15th day of every month. Now, it was provided by month. So he went into April, pulled out the day 15 from 10 to 2 every month and condensed it into a video. It's the best way that he could come up with. And he would do this by corresponding the behavior that he was seeing on the video to Dr. Walla's reports, because she was doing reports every day. So they tried to enter those into evidence, and there was an objection by the state. Relevance. What? What do you mean relevance? We're trying to show his mental health deterioration visibly. We're trying to show the behaviors, the demeanor. Everybody's talked about his demeanor, but nobody's seen it. And the judge sustained it. No, here's what she said. We need to condense it even more. So that he could give dates and times of what the jury was going to see. So this poor intern has to leave the courtroom and go and work on it. So the defense, they've got to move on. They've got to go on to something else. It doesn't get shown to the jury. I'm sure we're going to come back and we're going to eventually see some of it. But, Brad's working. Brad is back to work trying to figure it out. Then the podcaster that I've been watching, Andrea Burkhart, discovered what was in the Google searches that were admitted into evidence by the state right before they closed. Let me talk to you about some of those. Let me see where we're at with time. Okay. Man held hostage by team. Movie about a man who is being held against his will. 65 best kidnapping and hostage movies ever made. So someone's searching for a movie. Story about rebuilding the Monon High Bridge. Shooting ranges near me. Should I? What does it say? I can't remember. What's the most horrifying thing I can watch? What's the most insidious thing I can watch? Various searches on Delphi. Various searches on Delphi murder updates. Delphi, 1.2 million to restore the jail. So these are all searches. We don't know who did the searches. We don't know when they were done. There's no context to any of this. And to me, no relevance to any of this. But anyway, that's what they were. Next person on the stand was a guy named Brad Heath. Now, this is the guy whom I think the woman I was talking about earlier saw on the bridge that day with a camera around his neck. I need some coffee. Sorry. Brad Heath. He's 70 years old. He's a retired exterminator. On February 13th, he was on the bridge from 143 to 206. Or, I apologize. On February 13th, from 143 to 206, he was servicing houses near the Freedom Bridge. He was an exterminator at the time, so he's servicing those houses. He did see a vehicle that day. At 8:45 in the morning is when he first saw a vehicle parked by that old CPS building at 8:45 in the morning. And he said that that afternoon, still there. He said it was an older, dark blue vehicle. It seemed out of place. Late 80s, early 90s type of car, 4-door. And he actually showed a picture of a similar vehicle. He had watched some movie where he'd seen a similar vehicle, so he screenshotted it. And this was shown to the jury, but the public did not get to see it. Maybe that wasn't the guy they were talking about. Maybe this is a different guy. Anyway, David McCain is the next person on the stand. How am I doing with time? Okay. David McCain He's the project manager of the trail system. So he was, he had examined the engineering report as part of acquiring this bridge from the railroad system on February 13th. Okay, this is the guy. He was actually on the bridge for about an hour. From 2 to 4 p.m. He went straight towards the high bridge. He was taking pictures. So this is the guy I think they saw. He said that this bridge is 852 feet long and 65 feet up from the creek. He saw a man and a woman as he was heading back from the bridge. And if that's at 4 p.m., like he says, that is probably Libby's parents looking for her. He saw a group of people. They said, "Have you seen two girls?" He said, "No." He did give the police his camera data card so that they could have access to the photos. Then they put the fire chief on. He's 57 years old. He was not cooperative. He didn't want to be there. Not inclined to be helpful to the defense. He was asked to help with the search that day, which included officers, firefighters, and cadets. They were all searching. They arrived around 10 p.m. at the bridge. They started searching at the south end of the bridge. They went deep into the woods by the creek, southwest of the bridge. Now, we know the girls were found northeast. But I think he might have said something different in his deposition. Not sure. Floodlight. He said they were using a floodlight out there. He doesn't remember if there were lights coming from the north side. He doesn't remember seeing lights. They were using flashlights or hand lights. He said he did see lights on the north side of the bridge on the west side. Now, the girls were on the north side of the bridge on the east side. They looked into the water on the southeast side. That's the creek. Girls were found on the northeast side, but on the southeast side along the creek, their clothing was found. He says that was searched. They didn't find any clothing the night before. Now, apparently the jurors are getting really bored at this point. Starting to yawn. Said didn't see any flashlights on the opposite side of the creek. So they're on that southeast side of the creek, where he says he didn't see any clothing. We know the girls' bodies are found on the northeast side of the creek. He says he didn't see any lights coming from over there. Okay. The next person on the stand is Officer Steve Mullen. Now, Steve at the time was the sheriff. Now, we know Liggett became the sheriff in 25 years later when they arrested Richard Allen. Liggett became the sheriff. But Mullen at the time was the sheriff. He admits from February 14th through the 21st, dozens of interviews were lost. Dozens. He does not have a list of the interviewees. Well, he says there's a list. It's in a filing cabinet somewhere, but it was never given to the defense. They never tried to recreate it. You had a list, didn't you? Did you ask to interview? Did you ask to re-interview everyone? He goes, I believe we did. Then there were more interviews where the audio was lost. Did you create a list of that? No. He said he wrote a report regarding both of these things. The missing interviews, the missing audio, wrote reports. Neither of those reports are dated. When did you write those reports, Mr. Mullen? Because they weren't provided to the defense, these 2 reports, until February of 2024. In August of 2024, 7 years later, he calls up Brad Weber and doesn't tell him what he needs to talk to him about. Hey, just need to talk to you. And when they start his interview, he just spontaneously says, hey, I went straight home from work. I thought you said he didn't know what you were there to talk to him about. Okay. 7 years later, went straight home from work. Okay. Doesn't know if he ever said this before. Did you previously say he went to check on his ATMs? No. And when he took the stand, he was emphatic. No, I didn't go check on my ATMs. No. So he was asked, did you have a side? Did Brad Weber have a side job? Yes. He maintained ATMs. Yeah. So then he was asked, do you have a list of law enforcement officers that were participated in the search and that were at the crime scene? He says, you have to ask someone else. He didn't know. Did you have a list of any officers who were carrying 6 Sauer weapons that night at the crime scene or during the search? I don't know. I don't know. This is the guy that's supposed to know the most about this case. He's the one that's been sitting at the state's table as a representative of the state with the most knowledge of everything. How important is it to your timeline that Betsy Blair saw a car? Now, Betsy Blair is the one that says she saw a car, but she hasn't been allowed to testify about the type of car she saw. Like one that looked like her dad's old Mercury. This was objected to as leading and sustained. So she was asked, you saw a car. She saw a car. And he says, yeah, she saw a car, but she got the description wrong. Maybe she was confused. How important is it that a witness saw a bloody person? Now, everybody goes sidebar. When they come back, apparently he's been told to move on. Witness is not allowed to answer that question. When did law enforcement become aware that Dr. Walla was paying attention to podcasters, true crime podcasters? And he said, I don't know. That's not important. I didn't think that was important. Did you put out an Amber Alert? I don't remember. What about the trail cams? Anybody ever check those trail cams? Yes, I'm aware that there were trail cams, but I'm not sure where they were located near, relative to where the girl's body was. There's no audio on these trail cams, but he said there is video of someone on a trail cam on the 14th. So he was asked, how close was that camera to the girls? He goes, I don't understand what you're asking. And when they rephrased it, he showed on the map where this trail cam was in relationship to the body. So if you have the bodies here, he said it was about the 10 o'clock position, which would put it like, over that way. So we don't know if it was I don't know. So in his depots, He said he saw trail cam footages from the 14th. But there may have been someone on the 13th. This is what he had said closer in time to the investigation, contrary to what he's saying on the stand now, that there was someone on the 14th. In his depo, he said he saw someone on the 13th on a trail cam. And then he said it was in his depot, within 200 yards of the crime scene. He was asked how many people participated in the search on the 13th. He didn't know. He says, I don't think I was in charge of that. The fire chief was keeping track of that. He wasn't even out there during the search. He's not aware of anyone that was searching that northeast area where the crime scene was later located. Then he was asked, how many times did Mr. Allen confess to this crime before he was incarcerated? And he said, I don't know. What? We all know the answer is no, he didn't. He didn't start confessing until he lost his marbles in April of the following year, April of 2022. I mean, good Lord. What a train wreck. What a train wreck. Okay, so I have not gotten to Saturday's testimony. That was Thursday and Friday. Defense testimony, Thursday and Friday. They spent a lot of time at sidebar. You know, like if you put a timer on it, maybe a couple hours, which is a huge waste of this jury's time, they're sequestered. For 2 weeks now, they've been sequestered. They were bussed over from Fort Wayne, Indiana to Delphi, because Delphi is a very small community, less than 3,000 residents. You're not going to find anybody that doesn't know about these murders or may have been involved. I'm just starting to think this is a whole community thing. They're sequestered in a hotel. You talk about solitary confinement. You better get me some yarn. That's all I can say. You better get me some yarn, because I'll be losing it. Every now and then they do get access. They get family visits. They get to use their phones sometimes, not all the time. So basically they're in their hotel rooms watching TV. I think are they allowed to watch TV? I don't even know. Maybe reading books. I don't know. I hope one of them writes a book when this is all over. I would love to get a juror interview or hear a juror interview when this is all said and done. But appellate issues out the wazoo. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying. And the person that I've been listening to, Andrea Burkhart, she is an appellate attorney. She had originally filed a motion with the court. This is how you start the ball rolling. You file a motion with the court to allow the public access to the exhibits and access to the audio tapes of the proceedings. Denied. Rubber stamp, denied. Which gave her the right to file a writ with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed to accept the writ. She has written it. She has filed it. Now, one of several things can happen at this point. The Supreme Court of Indiana can just deny it outright, grant it outright, just say granted, at which point we get to hear the audios, see the videos, see what the evidence is that we haven't been shown. Or they can set it for hearing, which means the judge is going to have to hire an attorney, an appellate attorney, and come up with some legal basis why the public cannot have access to these audio recordings and access to the evidence. So I am following this very closely to see how it turns out, because I really want to see the bridge video, to be honest with you. It's 40 seconds long. All we've seen is that snippet that's enhanced Enhanced meaning it was blown up and then filled in by AI. Yeah, that's all we've seen. And it says down the hill. Guys, down the hill. That's all we've seen from that video. And that was enhanced. The voiceover was enhanced. All right, so that's the show for today. It's dreary here again today. I think my mental health is suffering from the dreariness and some other things that are going on. But I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, everybody. Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. It's free. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.